Hey everyone, I'm Almar of almarsguides.com, and you might notice my screen is a little teeny bit different than it usually is. I'll give you guys a few seconds to figure it out. Maybe you can see what's a little bit different than usual. For those of you who haven't figured it out yet, I'm now 10 boxing. And this video is going to be kind of a update slash maybe some tips. There's a few items that I would like to bring up in here that will be going up slash changing in price over the next few months. So some of them I've already talked about. Some of them are going to be new. So take that for what you will. Now, this video mostly is here to explain my absence. And I think the fact that I'm now 10 boxing does a pretty good job of explaining my absence. I'm currently leveling up 2 groups of characters. So as you can see, this is going to be my second 5-box group, which I decided to go with a tank for it. They're only in their level 30s right now. All about level 32, somewhere in there. With this oddball out because I've been leveling them with mages, power leveling them. Therefore, I can only do 4 characters at once instead of the whole group of 5. So I've had to do 2 power level groups instead of 1, which is... it seemed like a much better idea when I started it than it is right now when they're all level 30 and I'm like grinding through Scarlet Monastery. It's not been that enjoyable, if I'm being completely honest. I've lost interest quite a few times over the past few weeks trying to force myself to finish these characters, and I will finish these characters, so there's no question about that. So basically what made me decide to start 10 boxing is Zul'Gurub, to be just completely blunt and straightforward about it. The cat's bugging to sit on my lap, so I'm screwing up nonstop here. But I went through all of the strategies for Zul'Gurub, and I came to the conclusion that I can 10 box the majority of the instance. The bosses that I can't 10 box, I can definitely invite a few of my guildies to fill in the blanks and then down those bosses. There was 2 bosses that specifically looked very challenging to me. The first one was the Bat Boss, the one that drops fireballs on the ground that you can't stand in. Depending on how frequent those fire drops are, determines the difficulty of the boss for me, because a lot of movement really fucks over boxers. I've watched a few videos on Zul'Gurub, and I've seen a few guilds kill that boss before he even had a chance to summon the first wave of bats. So that is reassuring, because if I can do a shit ton of DPS and basically negate their mechanics, that is best case scenario for me, by far. And the second boss that is going to be challenging is the balancing boss. Specifically, there's one boss where you have to balance 3 mobs at one time while fighting it, and then they all die and resurrect and you fight one big boss. That's probably going to be the second hardest boss, or just the straight up hardest boss in the entire instance for me to defeat. And the reason for that is A, it requires 3 tanks and 3 sets of different coordination. I'm going to have to watch all 3 of the mob's HPs at the same time, which is going to be quite challenging to do as a boxer. And also, to make matters worse, what I'm going to have to do instead too is figure out how to DPS them, because when I DPS, when I hit my button, all of my characters are going to attack whatever target they have targeted. And if I'm attacking on 7 mages or 6 mages, whatever my end comp is going to be, if they're all hitting the same target with 6 frost bolts at one time, it's going to chunk off their HP. And it's going to be really hard to balance that unless I do 1 round of frost bolts on one boss, 1 round on the other, 1 round on the other, and cycle it that way. It's a really crappy way of doing it, but it might be the only thing I can do unless I can group them all up and arcane explosion them or AoE them or use whatever method possible for that. It's going to be a experiment once I get to the boss until I decide, or until I determine what strategy works best on that boss. I went through the strategy for Hakar, and I'm fairly certain I can kill Hakar. And almost all of the other bosses in that instance, I don't see much difficulty with. I've done most of I've done most of the mechanics before at one point in time while playing EverQuest, boxing in that game or boxing in Rift. So I'm pretty good when it comes to mechanics, and I already have a lot of strategies in place. Like for example, in Molten Core, I am 100% sure I can box both Geddon and Gar. The only hard part of the Gar fight is going to be killing the ads and getting my mages away from them before they explode fast enough, or however I would figure out something like that. The Geddon mechanic, absolute piece of cake. I've done bosses in EverQuest with the Geddon mechanic before, and all it comes down to is memorizing which screen is who. So once I see a name pop up, like if I see the name Lytle pop up, I know I actually went to the wrong screen, but he's this screen right here. And then if I see Maui pop up, I know he's that screen. Second tank, the off tank, he'll be on this screen. So that's really all the Geddon mechanic is memorizing what screen belongs to which player. You do that, easy as pie. As for the rest of Molten Core, funny enough, I think the Lucifron fight would be one of the harder ones to box because I don't have a proper way of decursing quite yet. I should download the decursive add-on and experiment with it a little bit, learn it a little bit better, see what it does, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be a something I do in the future when I actually start boxing harder instances / harder stuff. Right now, I'm kind of taking a really cavalier way to approach to boxing because I'm power leveling and I was only doing a 5-box to begin with. Really none of the instances that I did with my 5-box were actually that challenging, if I'm being honest. I did a lot of UBRS, but I never completed UBRS. With this 10-box, I'm 100% going to be able to complete UBRS without any not without any difficulty, but the last boss will be a little bit of a challenge, but that's about it. I just need to get used to tank swapping on the two. And I'll probably also need to do something about my target macros along with that. So it's just going to be mostly tweaking, experimentation, and messing with stuff, when the time comes. So as far as auction house tips, since I know there's a few people that watch my channel specifically for that, there's 2 items, one that I've already talked about and one that I'm going to talk about here. Wild Steel Bloom, these items are going to be going up in price quite a bit in the future. Mainly because they're a pain in the ass to get, and the second reason because they're used in a ton of stuff, plus leveling the trade skills. The same goes for Goldthorn. So you can see stuff like Elixir of Defense right here requires the Wild Steel Bloom. You need a Wild Steel. What I'm trying to say is you need Wild Steel Bloom in order to level most of alchemy through, I think, like 180 through 220, somewhere in there. A lot of these recipes are going to take Goldthorn and Wild Steel Bloom. And that's not taking into consideration how much high-end raiders are going to be using these same items. Goldthorn is used in agility pots, so it's going to be sought after by hunters and other agility users. And more so, Wild Steel Bloom is used in these Elixir of Fortitudes, which are a consumable that stacks with literally every other consumable in the game and can be used for literally every single class. Most valuable for tanks and probably healers. So that's going to be going up in price substantially over the next few months, and as just the game goes on in general. The next big one that I've already talked about a decent amount is this, Elemental Earth. So as you can see on my server, Elemental Earth is still ridiculously cheap. On other servers, high pop servers, it's not going to be like that at all. They're already paying upwards of like 7 gold for Elemental Earth. But due to the fact that my server has like the 3rd lowest horde population or something like that in the entire game, the items are still quite cheap. And they're probably not going to stay cheap for much longer. AQ40 is going to require a ton of nature protection potions for people, and that's going to raise the demand of Elemental Earth insanely. On top of that, the elemental sharpening stones, which is the main thing they're being used for right now, are not going to stay this, like, eventually we're going to be using consumables a lot more than we're using them right now. Instances are on farm, they're still pretty easy, blah, blah, blah. it's not that big of a deal. As time goes on and consumables become more in demand, more required / set in stone for raid guilds, prices or the elemental earths like these are going to go up in price rapidly and radically. This is probably the the lowest I'll ever see them again, which is why I'm going to buy a few right now while I'm making this video. Aside from these elemental earths, the other two hidden, it's not crit moss. The other two underrated items that are going to skyrocket in price are grave moss and fade leaf. And the reason for this is both of these items are used in shadow oil right here, which is used in greater shadow protection potions. So once Naxxramas comes out and people have to actually start drinking greater shadow protection potions all the time, as you can imagine, market price is going to go up for those items, and it's only going to get harder to get them, to find them, and more expensive. So that's basically it for this video. It's just a quick little update, few little tips here and there, and there's actually one last thing that I would like to update / money-making tip that is not going to be applicable for everyone, but it's still applicable for some, and that is Mooncloth, cured deep rock salt, and all alchemy transmutes. To be more specific, what I'm getting at is, in the future when Naxx comes out, a lot of the items from Naxx, or a lot of the set gear, like the quest turn-ins for them, require these trade skill items that you can only do once every few days. So stuff like Mooncloth, stuff like Deep Rock Salt, stuff like the Alchemy Transmutes. Hold on, I'm getting a little in over my head here. All of those items are on a timer. And you can only... The Mooncloth is, I think, a 3-day timer. The Transmutes are a 1-day timer. And the... what were the other ones? Oh, yeah, the Deep Rock Salt, that's on like a 3-day timer, too. So the main reason that these items are worthwhile to stock up on, or worthwhile to prepare for stocking up on now, is because Naxx AQ40... I know I'm repeating myself, sorry. The Naxx AQ40... they're going to be using these items to make the armor. So the demand for these items on top of what it already is only going to go up from here. And it's going to go up exponentially when people need these items for their Naxxramas gear. And I think AQ40 gear, I'm not entirely sure, don't quote me on that. But this is the biggest money-making tip that I can give to most people, which might seem obvious, but it's not entirely obvious. And it's something I'm taking advantage of wholeheartedly myself. A lot of these alts that I'm leveling now have alchemy and tailoring on them. Alchemy tailoring, alchemy tailoring, alchemy leatherworking. Where's the other one? Alchemy tailoring. And then tailoring, he's also herbalism. So the reason I'm doing this on all of the characters is to take advantage of the long trade skill cooldowns. If I have 10 characters that have trade skill cooldowns available, well, I did the math on my server, it's 6 gold per trade skill per day. Specifically, alchemy is the one that I did the math with, but Mooncloth kind of evens out to about the same thing. The only one that does not is leatherworking. Leatherworking is about 2 gold a day, with a 3-day cooldown for the salt shaker, but all of the transmutes are about 6 gold a day. And Mooncloth, like I said, averages out to about 6 gold a day, but maybe like 4 to 6 gold, depending on what it is on your server. So if you have 10 characters, that's 60 gold a day. So that is 10 characters, 60 gold a day. You got 60 times 10, so that would be 600. So that would be 1,800 gold for a month, if you have 10 characters with 10 trade skill cooldowns at the current price. That's not, calculating for future inflation. So with my 10 box right now, I've almost guaranteed 1,800 gold a month with just my main characters. That doesn't include all of the alts that I'm currently leveling. Like Almar, Joe, and Reversed right here. These characters are literally just going to be standing in Moonwells, trade skill cooldown characters. That's probably all they're going to be used for at level 60. And if you're a boxer, or if you're somebody that doesn't mind leveling alts and taking advantage of this, I strongly recommend you get a head start on it right now. You can do nothing but rested XP the whole entire way. There's still plenty of time. We got probably like 5 or 6 months away from, AQ coming out, or Nax coming out. And if you get a head start on it now, you'll probably have a full set of alts leveled to 35, which is the only level you need to get them to max out your trade skills. You can level your alts to 35, and you'll probably have 7 to 10 of them waiting for you by the time, Nax releases, and you can start taking advantage of those long trade skill cooldowns. So that's the last piece of advice I have for you guys. If you manage to stay in the video long enough to the end, thank you, and hopefully you find that advice somewhat useful or somewhat valuable to you. I know it won't be as useful to people who are non-boxers. Obviously, as a boxer, I can kind of take advantage of those long train skill cooldowns a lot easier than everybody else, due to the fact that I have access to a very large volume of characters at basically all times. That's going to be my long-term money-making strategy, is those trade skill cooldowns, and I will do a video on it in the future once I actually get more characters, maxed out trade skills, high level, stuff like that. I'm getting close to the first set of alts being done. As you can see, they're level 32 to 35 right now, or 31 to 32 right now. Once they're done, I can finish off tailoring, finish off alchemy, and then park them in a moonwell. Oh, and if you're wondering, my secret for what transmutes I'm going to be doing, I will cover that in a future video, but I assure you, I'm not depending on Arcanite transmutes. I have a better strategy than that, and I will share it publicly in the future when I'm more ready to release my information about the trade skill cooldown money-making methods that I've come up with. That's all for now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you around in the next one.